The airport was a frenzy of movement, travelers bustling through the terminals with rolling suitcases trailing behind them like loyal pets, loudspeakers barking out flight updates that echoed across the sprawling halls. It was the usual controlled chaos of JFK International, where hundreds of lives crossed paths for just a moment before jetting off to their destinations. But amid the buzz of early morning departures, one singular moment brought everything to a screeching halt. The sharp clatter of a cane striking the polished floor shattered the background hum like a dropped glass in a quiet room. Heads turned. Conversation stopped. There, near the first-class boarding gate, an elderly black woman stood frozen, her soft blue eyes wide with surprise, her hand trembling as she reached to shield herself. The cane that had just slipped from her fingers lay abandoned at her feet. Standing before her was a young blonde flight attendant whose name badge read Julia Monroe. Julia's green eyes burned with irritation as she gestured harshly toward the boarding gate. "I told you to step aside," she barked, her voice loud enough to silence the nearby crowd. "First class isn't for people like you." The words hung in the air like smoke after a firecracker, acrid and choking. Passengers near the gate froze, eyes darting between the flight attendant and the woman she had just humiliated. Uneasy murmurs rippled through the space, but not one person stepped forward. The woman, whose name was Evelyn Crawford, did not flinch. Though her hand trembled as she bent slowly to retrieve her cane, her posture remained upright, regal even. She looked directly into Julia's eyes, her own gaze calm and unwavering, cutting through the young woman's aggression with the kind of quiet power that cannot be faked. In a voice soft yet unmistakably strong, Evelyn spoke words that would become etched into the memories of everyone at that gate. "You've just made the biggest mistake of your career." The story of Evelyn Crawford and Julia Monroe would unfold from this momentous tale, not of revenge, but of awakening, accountability, and the fight against prejudice still alive in the spaces we least expect. In the charged silence of the boarding gate, as travelers held their breath, none of them knew that this was the beginning of a chain of events that would force an entire company, and especially one woman, to confront the ugliest parts of their assumptions. Evelyn, a successful executive known to few outside the corporate elite, had faced such treatment before. But today was different. Today it would not go unchallenged. And Julia Monroe, once so sure of her place in the polished world of first-class service, was about to learn what it truly means to carry the weight of one's actions. Passengers remained frozen, eyes wide, unsure of what to do. Among them was Sebastian Hartley, a young entrepreneur dressed sharply in a charcoal suit. From his vantage point in the VIP lounge, he had observed the situation unfold with increasing disbelief. Abigail Miller, a middle-aged lawyer waiting nearby, gasped quietly, her hand lifting instinctively to her mouth as she watched the scene escalate. Julia Monroe's hands trembled slightly, though she tried to mask it by crossing her arms. Her chin lifted in defiance, but the confidence she had exuded moments before now flickered beneath the weight of Evelyn's unyielding gaze. She glanced around at the bystanders as if searching for someone to back her up, but found no allies. The unease in the air was palpable. Evelyn stood her ground, unshaken. She did not raise her voice. She did not plead. Instead, she carefully adjusted the collar of her emerald green blazer and retrieved her ticket from the pocket of her coat. Without breaking eye contact, she held it out toward Julia. "Check it again," Evelyn said quietly. Julia snatched the ticket from Evelyn's hand, her expression twisting into a sneer as she scanned the details. But as her eyes reached the name Evelyn Crawford and the bold letters stating First Class 1A, the color drained from her face. A ripple of whispers moved through the surrounding crowd as passengers craned their necks to see what was written. Julia's lips parted, but no words came out. She glanced nervously toward the gate agent who had been watching the exchange silently, his eyes now wide with alarm. The gate agent leaned closer, confirming what Julia already knew but couldn't accept. "Mrs. Crawford is indeed a first-class passenger," the agent said, his voice tight with discomfort. Evelyn did not smirk. She did not gloat. She simply gave a small, graceful nod. "Thank you," she replied softly. The tension in the air grew heavier as Sebastian Hartley discreetly began recording the incident on his phone. He knew instinctively that this was not the kind of story that could simply be swept under the rug. Abigail Miller shifted uncomfortably in her seat, her heart pounding with indignation, wishing someone would speak up, wishing she could find the courage herself. Julia, however, still could not let go of her pride. With a tight jaw, she tried to double down on her earlier accusation. Even if the ticket says first class, she snapped, there have been cases of people using stolen or forged documents. Gasps echoed through the boarding area. Several passengers began to murmur louder now, their discomfort turning into outrage. Enough, came a calm, authoritative voice from the side. Richard Montgomery, the senior manager of the airline's customer relations department, had arrived on the scene, drawn by the commotion. A man in his late 50s with silver-streaked hair and a demeanor that demanded respect. He stepped between Evelyn and Julia, his sharp eyes scanning the situation. He took one look at the shredded remnants of Evelyn's torn ticket on the floor and then at Julia Monroe's flushed, trembling face. "Miss Monroe, what exactly is going on here?" Richard asked, his voice clipped and professional. Julia opened her mouth, but no coherent words came out. She stammered, too was just ensuring proper boarding procedures. Richard raised a hand, silencing her. He turned to Evelyn, his expression softening. "Mrs. Crawford, on behalf of the airline, I deeply apologize for the treatment you've received," he said, bowing his head slightly. "Please allow me to personally escort you onto the plane." The revelation in his words naming Evelyn directly and formally made Julia's stomach drop. A sinking realization began to dawn on her, but she wasn't yet prepared for the truth of who Evelyn Crawford really was. Evelyn nodded once, gracious but unsmiling. She accepted Richard's offer without a word. But as she stepped forward, she paused beside Julia. "You should know," Evelyn said softly, "that I built the foundation of this airline with my own hands. I am its founder and chairwoman." The weight of her words hit like a tidal wave. Gasps rang out across the gate area. Phones lifted higher, capturing every second. Julia Monroe's eyes widened in terror, her lips quivering. Her knees buckled, and she reached out to steady herself against the gate podium. The whispers of the crowd became a wave of outrage, shock, and judgment. But Evelyn Crawford, true to her nature, did not revel in the young woman's humiliation. Instead, she turned away, walking steadily toward the boarding ramp, Richard Montgomery at her side. The incident, however, was far from over, and Julia Monroe, standing alone amidst the wreckage of her pride, was about to face the full consequences of the line she had crossed. The airport was a frenzy of movement, travelers bustling through the terminals with rolling suitcases trailing behind them like loyal pets, loudspeakers barking out flight updates that echoed across the sprawling halls. It was the usual controlled chaos of JFK International, where hundreds of lives crossed paths for just a moment before jetting off to their destinations. But amid the buzz of early morning departures, one singular moment brought everything to a screeching halt. The sharp clatter of a cane striking the polished floor shattered the background hum like a dropped glass in a quiet room. Heads turned. Conversation stopped. There, near the first-class boarding gate, an elderly black woman stood frozen, her soft blue eyes wide with surprise, her hand trembling as she reached to shield herself. The cane that had just slipped from her fingers lay abandoned at her feet. Standing before her was a young blonde flight attendant whose name badge read Julia Monroe.